Good evening. My name is John Henry, and I'm an alcoholic. In this Code Blue Big Book Action and Study seminar, we're going to go through the first 164 pages of the Big Book, the recovery section, and we're going to do the work that the first 100 people who recovered said we have to do to overcome this hopeless condition of mind and body. I borrow heavily from the Golden Slippers, from Joe and Charlie, from Clancy, and from all of the giants who have gone before me. Now, I don't claim to be any big book guru or any kind of top 10 spiritualist. I'm just a simple drunk. I was almost dead from the disease. When I finally became willing to do the action in our book, I was able to recover and have a pretty good life. So I'm hoping that there's 2s and 3s and 4s of you listening to this together. You're going to need a big book. I like the large print big book, highlighter and pen. I'm going to try to get some of the paperwork that I've got online. And please bring your willingness. Please bring your willingness and your open mind. And as you're going to see, we open every session with the set-aside prayer so that we may be more open to receiving this information. Thanks for listening. Good evening, I'm John Alcoholic.
Hi, John.
During the 1950s, a man by the name of Max C., now deceased, started a group in Winnipeg, Manitoba called the Golden Slippers. The group was a back to the basics of the big book kind of group, especially for those people who could not stay sober for any length of time. The group took a bunch of chronic slippers and walked them through the steps, taking the action exactly as laid out by the first 100 men and women who wrote the basic textbook Alcoholics Anonymous. This is not your typical thanks for sharing kind of AA meeting, nor is it like any seminar. Participants are asked to do all 12 steps as laid out in our basic textbook. One or more of the people who have done this work before will be guides to lead you through the instructions in our basic textbook using a dictionary published at about the same time as the book Alcoholics Anonymous to help us better understand the directions as they were written by the first 100 men and women. We ask every participant to commit to the entire process. Though we read and study the AA Big Book, this group is not limited to members of AA. We who have participated in these groups before have come to understand that these sessions make us much better sponsors. We can now lead people through the steps exactly as given to us by those who have gone before, unfettered and unchanged. In addition to being a boot camp for sponsors, we also feel this is especially valuable to those who've been through some sort of treatment or rehab and have been in effect left off at step 3 or 5. Recovery requires that we do all 12 steps. We recover in AA by taking the steps, and if we don't take the action as described in our basic textbook, we might not recover. The study and action sessions will guide you through the steps precisely as the first 100 men and women laid them down. These are back to the basic sessions, accepting the simple kit of spiritual tools that's been laid at our feet. Let's open with the set-aside prayer. God, please let me set aside everything I think I know about sobriety, life, and you, so that I may be open to a new experience. Peace. All right, welcome everybody. Hope everybody had a good Halloween. I think last week I read that little article about that guy that relapsed after 30 years last week. Well, you know, one of my friends came to the Saturday night meeting here, and he was up talking about one of his sponsees who's been having some difficulties, and his sponsee killed himself early Sunday morning. And yeah, I mean, it's, you know, everybody's got to know that this is a deadly disease, and this is a progressive disease. And I don't care if you live in Minnetonka. I don't care if you're rich, you're poor, you're black, you're white, you're Jewish, you're Catholic, you're atheist. I don't care. If you are a real alcoholic and you don't do these things, this disease can easily kill you. Probably will kill you. So I was very sad, and you know, I told him, you know, a lot of times when that happens to people, you know, the sponsor, you know, feels really bad and kind of blames themselves, but we can't do that. We're just out there trying to lead and trying to help, and you know, we just do the best we can. So anyway, very sad. Let's go to page 58. How it works. Okay, I'm going to read a little bit and then do some notes like I usually do. I'm kind of mixed up today. I was a really busy day at work, which is a good thing, so I didn't have a whole lot of time to prep. At the top of the page, we're going to write a few things before we start reading. Let's write intentions, VS, verse, versus actions. Right? Intentions versus actions. Very important to distinguish between them. Right? We've all got good intentions, but this is a program of action. So intentions versus actions. And then let's write dedicate 1 day a week to work with sponsees. Dedicate 1 day a week to work with sponsees. Once we work these steps, we want to go out and help other sick and dying alcoholics. That's the whole idea behind these steps, behind life, I think, once we have the awakening. And once again, this book, and you don't need to write this, I've said it before, this book is the testimony of the first 100 people. And though it was written by Bill Wilson, we're gonna when I talk a little bit about how he wrote How It Works today, we're gonna see that other people were involved in what actually got written down. So chapter 5, How It Works. My sponsor had me do this. He said, cross out rarely and above it write never. Right, I think there's somebody said that Bill wanted to say never. I don't know if that's true or not. But my sponsor said never had he seen anybody fail who had done the work. And me too. Anybody that I'm working with one-on-one, and again, I've only been doing this 5 years, but the people that have been willing to go through the steps and who have done everything are sober and in contact with me today. The people who were not willing to do their 4th step, or they weren't willing to go out and make their amends, those people, I don't know where they are. I hope they're okay, but I don't know. So rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. So highlight our path and draw a little arrow up and write the 12 steps. That's what our path is. The 12 steps. Those who do not recover, highlight, are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Stop highlighting at program. And then off to the left, we're going to write in prison, back then, right, in the 30s. You can write in prison, back then, /30s. So that's one of the cannots. People in prison didn't have access to meetings. They didn't have access to this book. Right? And we're going to see there's a few more, too. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. Circle the word honest. And then again, off to the left, we're going to write, if you can't be honest, you are a cannot. If you can't be honest, you are a cannot. Now, funny enough, if we go through this work and we try to do the best that we can to the best of our ability, I think it's going to work. When I came in, I wasn't a very honest person. Dishonesty came quite easily to me. But through the working of these steps, that changed. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living, highlight, which demands rigorous honesty. And circle that word honesty again. Right? Which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders. Underline mental disorders, and off to the left write depression and schizophrenia. And don't ask me how to spell schizophrenia. Depression and schizophrenia are two of the mental disorders. Right? But many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Again, circle honest. Boy, there it is. Honest, honesty, honest. Okay. Now again, after that word honest, I'm going to have you write it again. Write give message of hope. That's what we do at meetings. We want to give them the message of hope when they come to these meetings. We want to give them a reason to come back. We want them to intuitively know that we've got something that they can have too, right? Because when people come in here, they're pretty depressed, they're pretty sad, they're pretty desperate, they're pretty hopeless. So give message of hope. Okay, let's highlight the next 2 lines. I know we're highlighting a lot. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like and what happened and what we are like now. Just highlight those 2 lines. Above what happened, write solution. That's the solution. We talked about that solution last week in We Agnostics. Okay? And then Off to the left, next to those two lines, write when you speak. When you speak. That's what we do when we speak. That's what the stories in the back of the book do, right? But if you ever go to speaker meetings, this is exactly what we do. What we used to be like, what happened to us, and what we're like now. We want to show other people, sick and dying alcoholics, that they too can have this. If you have decided you want what we have, highlight, and are willing to go to any length to get it, just that little line there, then you are ready to take certain steps. Okay, now after certain steps, write ask sponsee. Because, right, we're going to ask the sponsee again, are you willing to go to any length for this? We've got to ask them. Because we're going to be doing some things coming up in the 4th step, 5th step, 6, 7, 8, and 9 that are going to be difficult. So we asked them at the beginning. Remember at the beginning, are you willing to go at any length for victory over alcohol and drugs? Sign it and date it. You have your sponsee do that, and we're going to ask them again because we're going to ask them to do some tough things. But they've got to do these things if they want these promises and they want the spiritual awakening. At some of these we balked. Highlight, we thought we could find an easier, softer way. Just that little line. And next to that, write must get sponsor. Right? People who run, I tried to run my own program for years and it did not work. Did not work at all. So must get sponsor. We've got to be accountable to somebody, and we need somebody who's walked this walk before to show us what to do. But we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Highlight the next sentence. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Highlight that line. Remember that we deal with alcohol. Cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one, circle one, that's a deity, who has all power. That one, circle one, is God, and circle God. And then highlight the next line. May you find him now. Okay? And that, let's write now in big letters, and let's write immediately. Not tomorrow. That means right now, this instant. Right? So immediately. Right now, not tomorrow. Immediately. And then highlight the next 5 words. Half measures availed us nothing. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. Highlight the next line. We asked his protection with care. Wait a minute. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Highlight that. And then after abandon, write prayer without reserve. Prayer without reserve. / total surrender. Usually we alcoholics got to be pretty badly mangled to do that. Prayer without reserve, total surrender. Okay, and then underline the next word, the next 2 lines. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. Right? And when I read the original how it works, we're going to look at that word suggested. So I'm going to read the steps, and then I'm going to give you the page number where you can find that step, or I should say the main, because these steps are talked about all over the book, but I'm going to give you the page number where the main, where conventional wisdom tells us that is the main part where that step is talked about. And I'm also going to give you the principle. Right? So we're going to write the page number and the principle for each step. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 30, honesty. Page 30, the principle is honesty. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 47, hope. Page 47, hope. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Circle God as we understood him. And then write 63, faith. 63, faith. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 64, courage. Page 64, courage. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 75, integrity. 75, integrity. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 76, willingness. 76, willingness. Humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 76, humility. 76, humility. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 76, brotherly love. 76, brotherly love. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. We're going to write 76, and we're going to write 2 for this one. We're going to write forgiveness / justice. Forgiveness and justice. Page 76. That's a big one there, page 76. Continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Page 84, and we're going to write 2 words for this one too. Perseverance and discipline. Perseverance and discipline. Page 84. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God. Underline God as we understood Him. Just that again, God as we understood Him. Praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. We're going to write page 85, spiritual awareness. And then we're going to write something at the bottom of the page. Page 85, spiritual awareness. And at the bottom of the page, we're going to write, steps are not suggested. Done by first 100, we must do. Steps are not suggested. Done by first 100, we must do.
One more time.
Steps are not suggested. Done by first 100, we must do. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics, underline, and to practice these principles in all our affairs, and double underline that word all. And we're going to write service, page 89. Service. Many of us exclaimed, underline this next sentence, what an order, I can't go through with it. Underline that, and right next to it write out loud. Out loud. I said that for years. I said that stuff scares the hell out of me. And it's all BS, that's what I told myself. Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. Highlight these principles, and somewhere in there write the steps. The steps. Right? At the end of step 12 there, they asked Bill about it, right? And to practice these principles in all our affairs, they said, Bill, what did you mean? And he said, well, I didn't want to use the word the steps twice in the same sentence, so I used the word principles. They're interchangeable. These principles that we've written down are interchangeable with the steps, and those are our guideposts on how we live our lives. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing, underline willing, to grow along spiritual lines. Okay, and then underline the next 3 lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Okay, and again, where it says the principles, write the steps. The steps. They're interchangeable. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic. Okay, above that, write doctor's opinion. That's the doctor's opinion. That's the obsession of the mind and the allergy of the body that we talked about. Our description of the alcoholic. The chapter to the agnostic, above that, write 4. That was chapter 4. We read it last week. And our personal adventures before and after. Okay, next to that, write stories in back. Stories in back. Well, Bill's story too, and the stories in the back. Make clear 3 pertinent ideas. Okay? And we're going to highlight the ABC. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. So after that, let's write, I will screw it up. I will screw it up. That probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And, pardon my language, but this is what I wrote. No God, you are screwed. Right? People say, John, you can't talk about God, you're going to run off the newcomer. Well, our book talks about God. Right? And if the newcomer runs off, we'll visit him at his grave or her grave. Right? That's what happens to us. No God, you are screwed. That God could and would if he were sought. Okay, and under the word sought, write action. Action. Okay, so by the A, we're going to write 1. By the B, we're going to write 2. And by the C, we're going to write 3 through 11. And off to the left, we're going to write program in a nutshell. Program in a nutshell. Okay. And then somewhere right after that C, let's write, we are at 82 pages. Now I'm counting the 4 words and the Roman numerals, but right, we are at 82 pages. Right? And then write, or circle being convinced. Being convinced, circle that. And then somewhere out there, off to the left, write, if not convinced, go back and reread. And we're going to go back and reread this from the very beginning where we started. So, and what does that mean if we're not convinced of ABC? Right? If we're not convinced of ABC. So, people say, go to how it works and do what it says and you'll be fine. Well, that's utter nonsense. We've got 82 pages up to this point trying to convince us of steps 1 and 2. If we do not have steps 1 and 2 down, we cannot go forward, right? So we got 82 pages to convince us that we're powerless over alcohol and that there is a solution for us, right? So being convinced, we were at step 3, right? We're not there now, but we're not doing step 3, but we're at step 3. Which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood Him. Highlight the next line. Just what do we mean by that, and just what do we do? Okay, what do we mean by that, and what do we do? So, I am going to, you guys can relax for a little bit now. I'm going to read some fun stuff. Let's see here. I hope I got my notes right. So what have we done up to this point, right? The ABC. Again, we've got 82 pages. Steps 1 and 2, how do you work steps 1 and 2? Well, I was taught that you really don't. They're conclusions of the mind. And we've got to hammer those conclusions of the mind home. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to go forward with the steps. So, in the doctor's opinion, right, we looked at what the problem was. The obsession of the mind and the allergy of the body. We're powerless, right? Where our lives are unmanageable. We're killing ourselves and those about us. Chapter 1, Bill's story, right, that gives alcoholics an example of somebody who has the problem. We see how it progressed, what happened, and we see him affect a recovery from it. Chapter 2, there is a solution that shows us the solution, the problem being powerlessness, the solution being power. Right? The power of the fellowship and the power of the vital spiritual experience. A lot of people today think that they can recover from the power of the fellowship alone, and that's a big mistake. If you're a real alcoholic, that's not going to work for you. Chapter 3 shows us what's going to happen to us alcoholics if we don't find that power and we don't have the vital spiritual experience. right? Insanity's going to return and we're going to drink again. And I know for me, to drink again is to die, right? Chapter 4, what we did last week, that shows us a power that we can begin to live with, that we can make a decision about. Bill might have thought, I've given them all the information they need to see the problem, to see the solution, and to accept the idea of that solution, which is the higher power. This brings us to how it works. Okay, these are the instructions on what we're going to do to find that power. Okay, so Bill had a really hard time with how it works. Bill was writing the book, the fellowship, right? The other, the other recovered people insisted on seeing exactly what he wrote. As he wrote pages, he sent copies of the pages to the groups in Akron. He sent copies of the pages to the group in New York City. And these people forced changes on Bill. And Bill began to see a difference between Akron and New York City. The people in Akron, and they were led by Dr. Bob Smith, they wanted a book about God. They had no problem with God. They wanted religion. They said, Bill, you put all kinds of Bible quotes in there. You bring God and more God. Now, the people in New York City, they wanted a book dealing with the mind itself and very little spirituality and no religion whatsoever. They were led by a guy called Jimmy the Atheist. Right, his name was Jimmy Burwell, and he said, Bill, you get that God stuff out of the book. You get that God stuff out of the book. So Bill is sitting here and he's thinking, how in the devil can I satisfy everybody? He's got Protestants, Catholics, Jews, a sprinkling of Muslims. Bill was having real difficulty writing how it works. Right? So as he tells the story, he was sitting on his bed one night with a pencil and a pad of paper, and he threw it on the floor in disgust, and he said, I can't do this. And he prayed and meditated for about 20 minutes. He picked up that pad of paper and the pencil, and he started writing how it works, and he said it was as if the pencil ran across the page itself. Right? When Bill was done, he numbered the steps, and there were 12 of them. Okay, well, remember, this was all based on the Oxford group. And the Oxford tenets, there were only 6. Right? So now all of a sudden, Bill goes from 6 steps to 12 steps, right? So you can write page 263. You can see, I believe, what the 6 tenets were. You don't need to write them down, but I'm just going to read them real quick. 1 was complete deflation. 2 was dependence and guidance from a higher power. 3 was moral inventory. 4, confession. 5, restitution. 6, continued work with other alcoholics, right? That was kind of the early ones. Another translation was 1, admitted hopeless. 2, got honest with self. 3, got honest with another. 4, made amends. 5, help others without demands. And 6, prayer to God as you understand Him. So there were kind of 2. But when he was done, there were no longer 6 steps, there were 12. And Bill was like, oh my God, I can hardly wait to show these guys. This is the most wonderful thing I've ever done in my life, right? And so when he showed the other members how it works, they looked at it and they got angry. They said, what are you doing, Bill? You can't do that, right? So they got really upset, and that's when the crap hit the fan. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to read the original How It Works, and the things that are different in here, I'm going to change the inflection of my tone so you can see. This is the original How It Works. It's a little bit foggy, so bear with me. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our directions. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a way of life which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to follow directions. And some of these, you may balk. You may think you can take it. But we doubt if you can. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that you are dealing with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for you. But there is one who has all power, that one is God. You must find him now. Half measures will avail you nothing. You stand at the turning point. Throw yourself under his protection and care with complete abandon. Now we think you can take it. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as your program of recovery. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care and direction of God as we understood him, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, admitted to God and to ourselves and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. We're entirely willing that God remove all these defects of character. Humbly on our knees asked him to remove our shortcomings, holding nothing back. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make complete amends to them all. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. Having had a spiritual experience, remember that's the one word that Bill changed after the first printing. He changed it to awakening. As the result of this course of action, right? You take a course of action when you go to the doctor. He says you've got to take this course of action with this penicillin to get better. We tried to carry this message to others, especially alcoholics, and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Now you may exclaim, what an order, I can't go through with it. Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to go along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, again, that's the doctor's opinion, Bill's story, some in chapter 2 and 3. The chapter to the agnostic, that's chapter 4. And our personal adventures before and after, that's Bill's stories and those in the back of the book, have been designed to sell you 3 pertinent ideas. Remember, Bill was a salesman, right? A, that you are alcoholic and cannot manage your own life, right? Step 1, that probably no human power can relieve your alcoholism. Step 2, that God can and will, right, if he were sought. That's the rest of step 2. If you are not convinced on any of these vital issues, you ought to reread the book to this point or else throw it away. Right? That's what Bill said, man. Let's see here if there's anything else I got. So again, guys, the steps 1 and 2, all of this work we've done thus far are conclusions of the mind, right? They're hammering it into our heads that we are powerless and our lives are unmanageable, and that we're going to need to find a power greater than ourselves to restore us to sanity, right? So now, we're ready to make that decision, right? And I'll cover that a little bit later. So back to the story, right? So Bill wanted to close the loopholes. I heard him talk on a tape, and he said, I needed to close all the loopholes because alcoholics are crafty people. So that's why he expanded the steps to 12, right? And the other people in the fellowship, they said, Bill, you can't give directions to alcoholics. You've got to give them suggestions. Bill, you can't say you, must. We gotta soften this up a little bit, right? And Bill said, I'm not going to change anything. And the other people said, Bill, remember at the beginning we agreed this was to be our book, not your book. And Bill said, look, man, these words came after prayer and meditation. They're God's words, they're not my words. And everybody said, we don't give a damn whose words they are. They're not going in our book, right? So this started a tremendous fight that almost destroyed the book project, and the fellowship as a whole. I mean, this almost was the end of everything, right? We're very lucky that that they worked it out. So Bill realized that he had to compromise, and there was a non-alcoholic psychiatrist around in the day, and he said, look, Bill, let's change directions to suggestions. Let's change you to we. Let's change must to ought. So, you know, Bill is like, well, guy, I don't really want to do this. He said, but I'll do it. I'll do it under one condition. And they said, Bill, what's that condition? You let me write the rest of this book and you don't interfere with me. And they said, well, Bill, we can't do that. We have no idea what you're going to write down. And he said, well, then I'm not going to do it. Well, then nobody else wanted to write the book. So they said, okay, Bill, you can finish the book the way you want to do it. Right? So, you know, Bill was cunning, baffling, and powerful. Right? He got the authority, and what happened? 2 pages later, directions and must are right back in the book. Now, directions and musts have been in the book all along. We've been reading the musts and the directions. They yanked them out for how it works, right? But Bill got them put right back in. So it destroys a little bit of the continuity of the book. But now that we know the history behind it, it makes a little bit more sense, right? So, I mean, everybody that says it's only suggested. Well, yes, you know, if you want the promises to come through and you want the awakening, then it is a must. All right, so we are, okay, so we're back to page 60. And you can write where it says the first requirement, circle that and highlight the first 4 lines. So there are requirements, right? He put it right back in there. It's a requirement is a must, right? The first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. On that basis, we are almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good. So we highlighted those 4 lines, and we wrote step 3 starts here. Okay? Step 3 starts here. I am just going to read a little bit about those basic instincts, and then we're gonna finish out up to where the 4th step starts. So everybody got that sheet on the basic instincts, right? So oh, by the way, does everybody have a 12 and 12? If you don't have a 12 and 12, you got to get one, because your homework between now and next Tuesday is to read the 4th step in the 12 and 12. Because Bill is going to teach us about these basic instincts of life. When Bill wrote the big book, he'd only been sober 3 years, and I mean, there's no way that Bill could have written this book. I mean, I think that God took over his pencil when he was writing this. When he wrote the 12 and 12, 12, 13, 14 years later, he knew a heck of a lot more about human nature because he'd studied with people all over the world by that point. So he's going to tell us about the social instincts, and the social instincts are what makes up self-will, right? So I'm just going to summarize a little bit about what he said and that's in the 4th step where he talks about the basic instincts of life, right? By the way, when we look at step 3, turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood Him, that seems pretty heavy duty, but your will is your thinking and your life is your actions. Right? So if we can turn our thinking and our actions over to the care of God, things are going to go a lot better for us. So will equals thinking and life equals actions. And for me, it's a lot easier than saying will and life seems pretty drastic. But when I ask God to direct my thinking and to direct my actions every morning, that seems a little bit more palatable to me. I don't know why, but it does. And that's all it means. So again, steps 1 and 2 are conclusions of the mind. So basic instincts of life, you've got them. All humans have or are born with 3 basic instincts of life, right? They're all on your sheet there. They're God-given and they're absolutely necessary for the survival of the human race. Therefore, these basic instincts are good. When I read that, I learned more about what makes me tick than I ever knew before, I'll tell you that. The first one is the social instinct, right? To be liked, accepted, and respected by others. We come together in groups. We need these desires to prevent a dog-eat-dog anarchy, right? So we've got a companionship to belong. or a prestige to be the leader of. And in there we've got self-esteem, what we think of ourselves, high or low. And that's based on what others think of us or what we think others think of us, right? Now that word pride, I used to think that was a good word. It's good to have a lot of pride, right? Well, sometimes pride, we think too well of ourselves, or we don't think well of or we think less of ourselves. Either way, it is not the truth, right? So this creates within humans an insatiable desire for more power, more recognition, right? You know, with me, I like to see my name on the top of the salesman list. Top salesman, John Henry. I love to see that, right? Every month. We're not getting it fast enough, so we take shortcuts. We lie, we con, we manipulate, we step on toes, right? We create pain and suffering for other people. They in turn create pain and suffering for us. Right? We run a life on self-will. It cannot be a success because we're always in collision with people, places, and things, right? We cheat to get that social instinct, right? To have others think we're the best. Next, we've got the security instinct. We all live one day at a time, but I'll bet everybody here's got an insurance policy, right? All humans want to be secure in the future. Food, clothing, shelter, and what we need to survive. Otherwise, we would die out in the winter. Right? So the world teaches us what we need to be secure, and we must sacrifice, and we can't blow it all today and be secure tomorrow. Once we reach a goal, we feel great, right? New dress, new shoes, new suit, new car, new house, new lake home, new business. We strive, we work. We have a great feeling when we reach our goal, but that feeling is only temporary, and then we look across and the guy across the street's got a bigger house than us, right? So we start on a new goal, right? We're not getting it fast enough, so we lie, we cheat, we con, we manipulate, we cause pain and suffering for others. They retaliate and cause us pain and suffering, right? Now the third instinct is the sex instinct. All humans have this desire, right? If we didn't, we would die out as a species, right? What a wonderful feeling upon both emotionally and physically upon the successful completion of the sex act, right? But again, it's only temporary. So as soon as we're done with it, we start thinking about doing it again. It's so pleasurable and exciting, we immediately think about doing it again, then doing it in different ways, then different positions, then with different people. The next thing you know, we're doing it at the wrong time in the wrong place with the wrong person. We create pain and suffering for other people. They retaliate, and they create pain and suffering for us. The fulfillment of these things can be so pleasurable that all humans from time to time will overdo in one or more of these areas. And again, when we do that, we create pain and suffering for others. Self-will comes from these instincts, right? We overdo them and we create wrongs. And we're going to see that incorrect judgment, right? We're going to see that that's exactly what a resentment is, right? We're going to see incorrect perception or believing. We're going to find out when we do the fourth step, that's what a fear is. We're incorrect treatment of other people. We're going to find out that those are the hurts and the harms that we do to other people. Now, it is easy to spot a self-centered, selfish human being running on self-will rather than God's will. They're always madder than hell. Damn him, damn her, they can't do that to me. And they're always scared to death. Oh my God, what's going to happen? I'm going to get fired. Oh my God. You know, and when we're that way, we cannot depend upon God. We cannot depend on other people. And if we are an alcoholic reaching the end of the road, we cannot depend on ourselves any longer. And we're running absolutely scared to death. And that's when we come into these rooms, right? A selfish, self-centered person, in order to fulfill these basic instincts of life, are always overdoing them and causing harms and hurts for other people, right? And that in turn causes us, them to retaliate, but it also causes us to have guilt, shame, and remorse, right? And now when we think we're the worst people ever, that's another reason that we go back to the sauce, right? The guilt, shame, and remorse. So, in a nutshell, those are the basic instincts, but read it. It's step 4 in the 12 and 12, and you are going to find out what makes you tick. I had to read it 3 or 4 times because it's a little bit heavy reading.
Did you say what page that is from? Start to
The step 4, it is in the 12, well, it just says step 4 in the 12 and 12. It's on page 42. Yep, so you read that, he talks about the basic instincts. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, so we're almost, that's what he's talking about here. We're almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good, right? Most people try to live by self-propulsion. Each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show, is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. If his arrangements would only stay put, if people would only do as he wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including himself, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. In trying to make these arrangements, our actor may sometimes be quite virtuous. Highlight to the end of the paragraph. He may be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest and self-sacrificing. On the other hand, he may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. But as with most humans, he is more likely to have varied traits. So, we've all, the problem with self-will, we've all got a little script up in our head that, if my wife and kids would just do this and this and this and this, then the world would be great. If my boss and co-workers would do this and this and this, life would be great. The problem is, though, every one of those people has their own script in their own head. They've all got their own self-will, and their script does not match our script, and we're trying to force things, and it's not going to work. We're going to write something at the top of page 61. We're going to write essentials for hearing God's will. Essentials for hearing God's will. A couple of them anyway, I'm sure there's a lot of them. Live today free of anger and fear. Live today free of anger and fear. When we're pissed off and we're scared, we're going to find out when we do the 4th step, God can't get through that crap. Right? So live today free of anger and fear. Seek prayer and meditation with humility. Seek, I guess you could write through prayer and meditation with humility. And listen to others. Essentials for hearing God's will. Live today free of anger and fear. Seek through prayer and meditation with humility. Listen to others. Listen to others. God definitely speaks through other people. But you guys are going to find out that once we work these steps, we're going to find out about intuitive thought. Right? And intuitive thought is those are those little things that'll pop up into your head that you feel compelled to do. Right? I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I felt compelled to do this code blue because it saved my life. That was intuitive thought. That wasn't me, right? And I shouldn't have been able to do it, right? I got out of there. I'm only sober, a year and a half, and the guy I was doing it with took off, and I'm doing it by myself. That was just one example of intuitive thought. Okay, so let's see. Oh, and next to that thing that we just highlighted, that he may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. Let's write, you spot it, you got it. Right? People at work who take shortcuts, right? I look at them and I go, God, you can't do that, you can't. And then I think about it and I go, they're just imitating what I do. Right? And I'm one of the top salesmen and they're imitating, but it upsets me. So you spot it, you got it. We see other people doing things that we do and we get upset. Isn't that funny? You spot it, you got it. One more thing we can write, it's not God, it's not odd, it's God. Right? I used to think there were, oh my God, when I was starting to get sober, oh my gosh, there's a lot of coincidences that are all going my way. It's not odd, it's God. Okay, so, what usually happens? The show doesn't come off very well. Right? We're trying to force other people to do things we want them to do. He begins to think that life doesn't treat him right. He decides to exert himself more. He becomes on the next occasion still more demanding or gracious as the case may be. Right? They just won't mind me. They won't do what I'm saying. Still, the play does not suit him. Admitting he may be somewhat at fault, highlight He is sure that other people are more to blame. Highlight that. And then highlight the next line. He becomes angry, indignant, self-pitying. Right? Pity party, man. That's going to kill us. Okay, so now, off to the right, let's write 6 questions of self-delusion. 6 questions of self-delusion. And after self-delusion, in parentheses, you can write will. 6 questions of self-delusion. And I'm going to give you a little translation of these 6 questions, right? So these are the 6 questions of self-delusion, in parentheses, will. Okay, so after self-pitying, we're going to put a 1. What is his basic trouble? Okay, that's kind of the rhetorical question, so we're not going to translate that. Put a 2 in front of is. Is he not really a self-seeker even when trying to be kind? So down at the bottom of the page, write really small. Let's write 2, and let's write look good in front of others. Is he not really a self-seeker even when trying to be kind? Put a 2 down there. Look good in front of others. Used to be real important. I had to run around working my ass off so people would think I'm somebody that I wasn't. Look good in front of others. 3 in front of is. Is he not a victim of the delusion that he can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if he only manages well? Okay. Put a 3 and write manipulate situations. Right? And then in parentheses, beer only question mark as a little example. But we think we can manipulate situations so they'll come out our way. We think we have that power. It's crazy. Manipulate situations, parentheses, beer only is a simple one, I guess. Put a 4 in front of is. Is it not evident to all the rest of the players that these are the things he wants? Okay, put a 4 down there. If I was king or queen, everything would be okay. Right? That's the tyrant king, what they're talking about. The tyrant king. If I was king, everything okay. Then we're going to put a 5 in front of and. And do not his actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can get from the show? That's an easy one. I just put a 5. I put piss them off. Piss them off. We step on the toes of others and they retaliate, and then we think we're the victim when we caused it. Snatching all they can get from the show, piss them off, and then put a 6 in front of is. Is he not, even in his best moments, a producer of confusion rather than harmony? So let's put 6 and let's write stir the pot. Stir the pot. Is he not, even in his best moments, a producer of confusion rather than harmony, right? When I'm up to my shenanigans and I'm doing all kinds of dishonest and stuff and I don't want anybody to find out, I can create enough chaos going on out there so that nobody's looking at old John, right? I'll stir that pot up and they'll look away from me and I can get away with my little business, right? Create chaos so they don't notice what I'm actually up to. Let's highlight the next 6 words. Our actor is self-centered, egocentric. Right? Our actor is self-centered, egocentric. Remember, earlier on, this book is going to ask us to give the 2 things that we love the most, our alcohol and our self-centeredness, right? Those are the 2 things that we love. Our actor is self-centered, egocentric. As people like to call it nowadays, he is like the retired businessman who lolls in the Florida sunshine in the winter, complaining of the sad state of the nation. The minister who sighs over the sins of the 20th century. Politicians and reformers who are sure all would be utopia if the rest of the world would only behave. The outlaw safecracker who thinks society has wronged him, and the alcoholic who has lost all and is locked up. Whatever our protestations, highlight the next 2 lines, are not most of us concerned with ourselves, our resentments, or our self-pity. Okay, so at the top of the page, we're going to write something. We're going to write self-seeking equals looking good in front of others. Self-seeking equals looking good in front of others. And then we're also up there, we're going to write, go to any length to believe the lies we tell ourselves. Go to any length to believe the lies we tell ourselves. Go to any length to believe the lies we tell ourselves. And then where we underlined are not most of us concerned with ourselves, our resentments, or our self-pity. Just next to that, write me, 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 me.
Is that John?
Yeah. You bet.
Was that 4 me's or 5?
I did 5, but for you, I think we better do 6, Todd. So, okay, so we're going to highlight the next 4 lines, man. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. You can stop highlighting there. Okay, above they retaliate, write victim. Victim. And then off to the left, let's write self-delusion equals thinking I know. Self-delusion equals thinking I know. I was so sure it was everybody else's fault. You know, the girlfriend, the cop, the boss, the judge, the IRS, everybody, man, all their fault, right? Sometimes they hurt us seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find, highlight to the end of the paragraph, that at some time in the past we have made decisions based on self, underline self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. Okay, so off to the left we're going to write leading into 4th step. Leading into 4th step, not a victim anymore. We're going to try to get rid of our victimhood. Leading into 4th step, not a victim anymore. And then I'm just going to go ahead and have you guys 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 highlight the next 6 lines. This is a big one here. Highlight the next 6 lines. So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. Above everything, we alcoholics must, circle must, be rid of this selfishness. We must, circle must, or it kills us. God makes that possible. You can stop highlighting there. Okay? Very important right there. Very important. We got to get rid of our selfishness. That's part of our disease. We must, or it kills us. And guess what? That power greater than ourselves is going to make that possible. Off to the left, we're going to write selfish equals money. Self-centered equals it's about me. Selfish equals money. Self-centered equals it's about me. We've all heard that joke. It's a blonde joke, right? How does the blonde screw in the light bulb? But yeah, I can put my name in there. How does John screw in a light bulb? He holds it up to the socket and waits for the world to revolve around him. Right? We must, or it kills us. God makes that possible. Selfish equals money. Self-centered equals it's about me. And then under that, we're going to keep writing. Fear that people won't do what I want. Fear that people won't do what I want them to. You can just keep writing all down the page there. Fear that people won't do what I want them to. And then one more we've got. Selfishness equals me not getting what I want out of life, relationships, work, family, ... Fear that people won't do what I want them to. Selfishness equals me not getting what I want out of life, relationships, work, family, ... Fear that people won't do what I want them to. Selfishness equals me not getting what I want out of life, relationships, work, family, ... And there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without His aid. Circle His aid. Many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them. Above, we could not live up to them. Write broken promises. Just write it somewhere in there. Small, hopefully you got good small handwriting. But we could not live up to them even though we would have liked to. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness, highlight our self-centeredness, much by wishing or trying, underline on our own power, and then underline also we had to have God's help, and circle the word had because it's a must. We had to have God's help. Okay, so after we had to have God's help, let's write step 3. Step 3. This is the how and why of it. First of all, highlight, we had to quit playing God. Okay? And then, I want you to circle that we, draw a little arrow to the margin, and write your name. Right? So I have there, John had to quit playing God. John had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided, circle the we decided, right? That's the people, that's us, that's the people who wrote the book, that hereafter in this drama of life, we're going to circle all these words for a deity. So let's circle God. God was going to be our director, circle director. He, circle he, is the principal, circle principal. We are his agent, circle his. He is the father, circle he and father. And we are his children, circle his. Right? So we got a new boss. We got a new boss, and it's not us. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept, underline, was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we pass to freedom. Okay, so you can write third step promise next to what I just wrote. That's a third step promise. It's a simple idea that we're going to let somebody else be the director of our lives. Now, we're also going to write something at the bottom of the page. Hopefully you got room. We do selfless acts to get rid of our selfishness. Remember, this is a program of action. We do selfless acts to get rid of our selfishness. We have to act our way into better thinking and better living. Every other therapy in the world, they say change your thinking and your actions will follow. But not us, because we're backwards people. We've got to change our actions first and then our thinking will follow. Right? We're backwards people. We do selfless acts to get rid of our selfishness. Now remember that arch. Bill is painting a picture in our minds of that arch made out of rocks, right? Made out of those big stones that we're going to walk through to freedom. Right? Step 1 is willingness. That's the first one. Step 2, belief, is the second one. And now God is the director. That's our third stone that we're putting in place. Right? And if you got a problem with this third step, some people you can look at it as simply as, okay, I'm going to make a decision to do the rest of the steps and see what happens. Right? People say, John, I turned it over to God 5 years ago, and my life is still horrible. things are not going my way. I turned it over 5 years ago. No, you don't turn anything over to God in step 3, right? You've got to do the actions that follow, right? That's where we do it. We do it by taking steps 4 through 9. That's where we turn it over to God, not in the decision. When we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. Okay, highlight, we had a new employer. Just that little line, and after employer, write God. We had a new employer. You can write God after that. Being all-powerful, highlight 2 words. He provided what we needed, underline needed, and circle if. What we needed if, and then highlight. We kept close to Him and performed His work well. Okay, so after that, we're going to write God's will for us. God's will for us. This is all about getting away from our self-will and going towards God's will, right? And remember, it said progress, not perfection, right? God couldn't would if He were sought, right? Couldn't would. Progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. We're never going to be perfect, right? Performed His work well. Established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves. Highlight the next 5 words. Our little plans and designs, right? Our little plans and designs. More and more, we became interested in seeing what, highlight the next 5 words, we could contribute to life. We could contribute to life. As we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of, highlight to the next 2 lines, His presence, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter. We were reborn, right? So we are going to become reborn in our minds, right? And every morning when I get up and I say, God, please direct my thinking and my actions this day, I get to be reborn every morning. And I need to do that because my self-will is going to make a strong comeback if I don't. So what that little paragraph I just read, we're going to write, that's 3rd step promise again. Right? And the 3rd step promise is, as we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, remember the, the bedevilments, we became conscious of His presence, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, hereafter, we were reborn. That is another 3rd step promise. So we're going to write something off to the right. Write service work, and then underneath that write, we feel awkward, talk to people, reach out, put your fear aside. Service work, we feel awkward, talk to people, reach out, put your fear aside. And then under that, write, what can I bring to the meeting? Service work, we feel awkward, talk to people, reach out, put your fear aside. What can I bring to the meeting? No matter how much fear you're feeling, or oh my gosh, what I'm thinking is stupid. No, it isn't. Share, because there's going to be somebody in that meeting that gets something out of what you say. So, service work, we feel awkward, talk to people, reach out, put your fear aside. What can I bring to the meeting? What can I bring to the meeting? Okay, so obviously everybody should have the 3rd step prayer highlighted, but we're going to actually we're going to take the 3rd step prayer when we end today. So we're going to skip the 3rd step prayer, and we're going to go down to. You see where it says, "May I do Thy will always." That's at the bottom of the 3rd step prayer. Okay, we're skipping that. So put a 1 in front of we thought. And then off to the right, you can write 3rd step directions. So they trick us in the book. Doggone it, they have us take the 3rd step, and after we take it, they give us the instructions. So, but we're going to do the instructions first. So put a 1 in front of we thought well before taking this step, making sure we were ready. Okay? That's number 1. 2 in front of that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to Him. That's quite a decision. Okay? Abandon, if you're in the Navy and your ship is going down, right? That's a big hunk of steel going down. If you're within 50 yards of that ship, you're going under. It's going to kill you. So abandon means to get the hell out of there. So we're abandoning ourselves, right? We're utterly to Him. We're getting our will the hell out of there if we can, and that's to save our lives. So 2 in front of that one, and then put a 3 in front of we and highlight the next 4 lines. We found it very desirable to take this spiritual step with an understanding person, such as our wife, best friend, or spiritual advisor, but it is better to meet God alone than with one who might misunderstand. Okay? Now keep in mind, you don't need to write this, but you know what, man? This book was written before there were meetings everywhere and before you had sponsors. So today, I like to take this step with my sponsees. My sponsor, I took it with him. Right? We got on our knees and we took it together. Because there's always more power in prayer when you do it with other people. Right? So today we got all kinds of people that will take this third step with us. And it's funny because I used to feel really embarrassed when people saw me praying when I first started praying with this program. And here I am. I could be at home or at work throwing up into the toilet with people seeing that all the time when I'm sicker than a dog. But here I am embarrassed because they see me praying. That's ridiculous. All right? There's nothing to be embarrassed about. But it is better to meet God alone than with one who might misunderstand. The wording was, of course, quite optional so long as we express the idea. Put a 4 in front of voicing and highlight the next 4 lines. Voicing it without reservation. That's the 4th direction. Okay, so all that whole, we can write third step directions there. Right? This was only a beginning, though if honestly and humbly made, an effect, sometimes a very great one, was felt at once. Okay? So off to the left, we're going to write something. Don't inflict our opinion of God on others. Don't inflict our opinion of God on others. That's why when Bill was writing it, that's why he had such a hard time, because he had all these different religions. Don't inflict our opinion of God on others. Okay. Highlight the next 2 lines. Next, we launched out on a course of vigorous action, the first step of which is a personal house cleaning. So don't turn the page. Highlight that. Circle vigorous action in addition and write 4 through 12. The vigorous action is steps 4 through 12. Okay. And then the first step of which is a personal house cleaning. After personal house cleaning, write step 4. Step 4 is the personal house cleaning. We've got a garbage can that's full of all kinds of crap, and we need to dump it out and we need to scrub that can clean. We're going to write something else at the bottom of the page. Spirituality is following a set of rules. Spirituality is following a set of rules. Spirituality is following a set of rules. I didn't know that, but because this program asked me to do a lot of things. And all those principles that we wrote down that are next to the steps, I try to live by those principles on a daily basis. Now, many days, if not most days, if not all days, I fail miserably, right? But I'm trying because it's progress, not perfection. I had a day Monday, man. My self-will came roaring back. I'm a commissioned salesman, and I had 3 instances on Monday where my self-will came back and I treated people very badly. right? And they were all customers, right? So I can't, hopefully when I see them I can make some amends, but my self-will took over. And I didn't even realize it till after it was done. It's kind of crazy. So we got to keep, we can ask God for help throughout the whole day. Now, many of you, if any of you guys ever saw Magnum P.I., that was a show in the 80s. And there was one episode where Magnum he had dealings with a samurai swordsman. And the samurai was talking to Magnum, and he said, Magnum, if you do not live life by a code, your life has no meaning. And you know what? I didn't know, but I lived my life with no code up until I sobered up and did these steps, and my life had no meaning. But today, my life does have a meaning, right? They say the two most important days in your life are not the day that you're born and the day that you die, but they're the day that you're born and the day you figure out what your purpose is, what your meaning is. So, personal house cleaning is step 4. At the top of page 64, let's write 30 days to break habits. 30 days to break habits. Right? So we want to be really close to our sponsees those first 30 days. And I mean, I tell you what, man, I one meeting a day minimum for the first 90 is what I like my sponsees to do, because the fellowship is going to support us, right? And if the fellowship supports us and keeps us from drinking long enough, we can work these steps, we can have the awakening, right? And then when we have that awakening, we wake up spiritually and we're no longer thirsty. So we need that fellowship to support us while we do the work. Right? And I mean, for me, I needed a meeting every single day. Personal house cleaning, which many of us had never attempted. Though our decision was a vital and crucial step. Okay, so next to decision, write third. So they're talking about the third step, right? Made a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood Him, right? Made a decision to turn our thinking and our actions over to the care of God. It's a vital and crucial step. It could have little, highlight, permanent effect unless at once, circle at once and highlight to the end of the paragraph. Unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us. So above which had been blocking us, we're going to write 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Right? So the effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us, we're going to do that. The effort is going to be 4 through 9. Right? And then we're going to, if we do that, we get rid of the things that are blocking us off from God. Right? And that's when we get the promises and we get the awakening. So off to the left, let's write, anger and fear blocks us from God. Anger and fear blocks us from God. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that next week. But can you imagine that son of a bitch? I'm going to show him he can't do that to me. How dare they do that to John Henry? If that crap's going through my head, there's no way God can get through that and help me, right? So we're going to get rid of that stuff, right? The other thing is, oh my God, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to get fired. Oh my God, she's going to leave me. Oh, poor me, right? God can't get through that either, man. So we're going to try to get rid of that stuff. Let's underline this next one. Our liquor was but a symptom. Holy cow, I came here to quit drinking, and now they're telling me that that's not even my problem? I've got a spiritual problem. The booze is just a byproduct of my spiritual problem of living by self. Crazy, man. So we had to get down to causes and conditions. Okay, so let's write stop week 7 right there, because next week, I know Todd's going to be deer hunting and bringing me some jerky back, but I know it's election day, and we do not do anything on outside issues, but I want everybody to vote. It's an important election. But very important that you're here at 6:30, because this is where the work begins. This is where the magic starts to happen, right? So I'm just going to tell you a quick story, and then we're going to take the third step. About 10 years ago, maybe 11 years ago, one of my teeth really hurt, and I went into the dentist, and he was gonna give me like a root canal or something, and he started jiggling with it, and his face turned to horror, and he said, "Oh my God!" He said, "I'm not charging you anything, but here, you got to go to the specialist." So I went to the specialist, and they looked at it, and they said, "Well, we're gonna have to yank that tooth," and so they yanked my tooth out, and then I had this big hole in my head. Well, for the next 5 years, I had enough money for alcohol and drugs, but I sure couldn't pay for that tooth. So 5 years ago, I sobered up, and I started to think about, golly, I'm going to get that tooth fixed. 4 years ago, I said, that's it. I can't eat steak. I'm going to get the tooth fixed. Nothing happened. 3 years ago, I was biting down on a BLT, and it hit into the soft tissue, and I was in horrible pain. I said, that's it. I'm getting that tooth fixed. Nothing happened. 2 years ago, I said, that's it. I can't enjoy eating this food. I got to get my tooth fixed. Nothing happened. A year and a half ago, I said, doggone it, I'm going to get the tooth fixed. But this time was a little different, right? I called up and I did research on the difference between a crown and a bridge, or an implant and a bridge, right? I did the research. Then I made an appointment with the dentist, and I went in and I saw the dentist, and I found out more information, right? And then I made an appointment for the dentist to actually do something. I gave him a large amount of money. I went back and they started working on it. I went back again and I had a new bridge. So my decision to get that new tooth had little permanent effect until I took action. Step 3, we make a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God, has zero effect until we do the work. Right? Zero. So we are going to, next week, we're going to start doing step 4, and that's the big one. Step 4 opened my eyes. I had no idea that I was wrong about just about everything in my life. I was the guy who was always right. You guys were always wrong, right? Well, I figured out that wasn't the case. Let's go back to step 3. We're taking step 3 together right here. I know it says to think about it, but let's take her. So we are on page 63, step 3. Buddy there? God, I offer myself to Thee to build with me and to do with me as Thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy will always. Peace. You see, there's no amen after that, because it's a decision, and we're going to keep going through these steps. So that is it, guys. Have a good week.